Howdy. This is the Views from the Shop podcast. We are live on this Sunday evening. It is Sunday, March 9th, 2025, and I wish you a very, very, very happy Bang Clang Day. Today's show exclusively presented by College Basketball Analytics. Now is the time to get there. As you get ready to fill out your brackets, as you research how Ohio State may fare against Iowa and other teams in the Big Ten tournament, get to College Basketball Analytics. CBBanalytics.com. You can use the code SHOT, SCHOTT, not SHOT, SHOT, SCHOTT, to get an entire month off an annual subscription. We appreciate them sponsoring today's show and the entire season of the Views from the Shop podcast. Well, here we are. Stats and Info tells me, the interns who I don't pay and also don't have, tells me Ohio State has lost to Indiana as of yesterday. That is a final score of 66-60. So today's show, this is out of the blue, right? You didn't know this was coming. This is live for you. Here's what we're going to cover live on Twitter or X, live on YouTube as well. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast as well. And on YouTube, we're going to cover Ohio State's loss with Indiana. Not going to be a lot of time on that game, but we will give some thoughts on that before moving to the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State knows who it will play in the first round now, as of Iowa-Nebraska's final score earlier today. So we'll barely cover that. We'll breach the surface of the Big Ten tournament at large as well before getting into some bracketology. Where does Ohio State currently stand? And other info like that. There's a lot of good stuff coming up this week. Not only am I hitting you with a live show, of course, but I'm going to be talking with a special guest tonight. That show will come out tomorrow. So again, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Please make sure to do that. And of course, subscribe on YouTube as well. Going to have two special guests this week. Two special guests who are very important this time of year. That's all I'll say. All right. Little teaser for you. So that is what is coming up for you. And then, of course, we'll preview Ohio State taking on Iowa on Wednesday, as the Buckeyes now know who they will play in the Big Ten tournament. All right. Let's get into it. Thanks for being here. So the Buckeyes lose to Indiana 66-60 yesterday. This was a huge game. I couldn't overstate it enough. A lot of people saying this was the biggest game that Ohio State had played in the past 3 seasons, at least in the men's basketball realm, as it was truly a win-and-in game. Indiana, probably in the NCAA tournament. Ohio State definitely would have been in the NCAA tournament had it beat Indiana yesterday. The Buckeyes got out to a nice lead, and it was an impressive start for the Buckeyes. The stick-to-itiveness, I would say, on the defensive end for the Buckeyes, handling Omar Ballo. They looked really, really good on the defensive front. Speaking of front, they were fronting Ballo and then coming down to doubling, choking, digging, sometimes straight up doubling at times. And Ohio State clearly knew off the ball where to go defensively. They rotated, they switched really, really well. They knew their rules in this game. I thought it was probably the best executed defensive game plan from Ohio State this entire season. They give up 66 points, which isn't awful, but it would be 6 points too many, or maybe 7. Micah Parrish in that first half, he forced 2 turnovers that led to immediate layups. Quez Glover was vintage Quez Glover. A lot of people in Ohio State Nation frustrated with play from Quez Glover. Quez Glover has been a guy over his college career. What you saw him do against Indiana is what he's done his entire career, from Florida to Samford, kind of to Kansas State, but not really since he didn't play a game there at Kansas State. But that's what Quez Glover has done his entire career. It has been find room and be crafty in the mid-range and pull up and take shots that really aren't analytically friendly, but he still makes them. Quez Glover had, I think, 6 points in this game, 4 of them coming in the first half, maybe all 6 in the first half. But the Buckeyes could not defensive rebound. And that was a huge issue for Ohio State. When you look at a team like Indiana, so strong in the front court, you've got to be able to rebound. Indiana, very front court centric. I've said it all the time this season when Ohio State has had to play Indiana. It's a front court centric team. So that in mind, you've got to rebound. Ohio State finished this game with a 62% defensive rebounding rate. That's absolutely horrible. You saw some rebounds from Sean Stewart. Devin Royal got in there a little bit, but we can talk about Aaron Bradshaw till the cows come home. You could talk about him twice on Sunday. We'll talk about him more than twice, probably today, given that it is Sunday. Aaron Bradshaw has been a complete disappointment for Ohio State rebounding this year for the Buckeyes. He played for the Buckeyes plenty of minutes to get more than one rebound. If you are 7'1", you should be getting more than one rebound in a game. That's absolutely awful, and it hurt Ohio State. And that was the biggest issue for Ohio State. They got some space in the first half, but when you're unable to rebound defensively and you give up a bunch of second chance points and you give Indiana, a team that could not make a shot in the first half, more opportunities to make shots, well, they're going to score more points than they should. And that's kind of what happened there in the first half. But you get to halftime, the front court isn't even in foul trouble for the first time in our lives this year. The front court not in foul trouble. I think Sean Stewart had one foul. Maybe Aaron Bradshaw had one. That was it. No player had more than one foul in the front court. Bruce Thornton had two, and that was scary. But overall, as you look at the way this game played out in the first 20 minutes, you felt really, really good. You had a lead. You felt like if you could just rebound better defensively and continue to keep Indiana's at arm's length, keep the crowd out of it, they so badly wanted to get into it, you felt like you were in a good spot. And unfortunately, Ohio State just ran out of gas in this game. Indiana takes a timeout with 13 minutes left to go in the second half, and they score 5 unanswered. Bring the game to 46-41, I think the score was at that point. And then the John Mobley Jr. flagrant foul. You can argue all you want whether or not that was a flagrant foul. At this point, it doesn't matter. The officials called it a flagrant foul. And that felt like the turning point in this game. You get to 8:16 left in the game. OSU led 49-45. After that, the Buckeyes could not buy a bucket. Indiana couldn't really buy a basket either, but they at least could get to the free throw line. Again, say what you want about officiating. It's over and done with now. The fact of the matter is, from that flagrant foul to the end of the game, Ohio State was 1 of 10 from the field in the final 9-ish minutes, 8-ish minutes of this game. Made one field goal out of 10 attempts, and they turned the ball over 3 times. That is not winning basketball. That is not closing out a basketball game. And because of that, Indiana was able to close out this game and win it 66-60. We've talked about the core 4 exhaustively on this show. Bruce Thornton, John Mobley Jr., Micah Parrish, and Devin Royal. They have got to score. They've got to score 58 points or more in games for Ohio State to have a chance. Ohio State scored 60 points total. So they were not going to get close in this game, and unfortunately, they lost. Bruce Thornton, again, he struggles mightily against Indiana. He struggled his entire career against Indiana. He had 9 points in this game, 2 of 10 from the field. John Mobley Jr. was not a big help for Ohio State either. He goes 1 of 8 from the three-point line. Other major stats in this game, Indiana scored 18 second chance points. That's the third most points off a second chance that Indiana has scored this entire season. And it came against an Ohio State team that has not been a good rebounding team this season. They are far and away one of the shortest teams in the Big Ten in terms of average height, according to KenPom. And they were unable to rebound in this game. They gave up a bunch of second chance points to Indiana. You also look at Indiana. They more than doubled Ohio State's free throw attempts in this game. Indiana was 23 of 31. They made 23 free throws in this game. Ohio State shot 15. That's an 8 free throw advantage, even if Ohio State is perfect. Ohio State was 10 of 15 in this game, shooting from the free throw line. That as well. You couple that with the amount of second chance points you gave up to an Indiana team that really wasn't that great offensively in this game, you just give away easy points. And that is how Ohio State lost this game. So the Buckeyes fall in this one. That record now really not good for Ohio State. 17-14, you look at the Archie Miller rule. If you don't know what that is, we'll talk about that later in the show. Doesn't bode well for Ohio State. And that transitions us into the Big Ten tournament. So the Buckeyes lose that game. What does it mean for NCAA tournament chances? Well, it means that the Big Ten tournament is now of utmost importance. This is the first year that I can remember where Ohio State is truly the bubbliest of bubble teams as you head into a conference tournament. We got good news today. Drake beat Bradley in its conference tournament in the MVC tournament. What is Missouri Valley Conference Tournament Championship? Drake wins that one. Bradley will not be dancing this year, which is huge for Ohio State and other bubble teams because you need as little of bid stealers as possible. Last year there were 5 on average. You're going to have 2 bid stealers when it comes to conference tournament play. So Ohio State transitions to Big Ten tournament play now. Here's where Ohio State would be if it could have protected its lead against Indiana. Well, number one, it would not be worried about the Archie Miller rule, because instead of 17 and 14, they would be 18 and 13. They would qualify there. Even if they lost its game in the Big Ten tournament in the first round on Thursday, it would still be okay. Now it's at the point where you lose this game, and now you've got to go play Iowa. That win, cool, whatever. It's Iowa. It's not impressive. It doesn't help the resume at all, other than that you get a little bit further away from that 500 number. And then the issue is you've got to go play Illinois on Thursday if you win on Wednesday. And if you go play Illinois and you win that game, that's great. You feel really good about your chances of making the NCAA tournament, or at least you know you're not completely out of it. Whereas if you lose that game to Illinois, you're back down to where you're in the Archie Miller rule. So let's talk about the Big Ten tournament. We'll just preview this from the start. So Ohio State's going to play Iowa. This is the third straight season Ohio State will play Iowa in the Big Ten tournament. That's a nice little nugget that you can share with your friends tomorrow or this evening. I don't care when you say it. They won 90-78 last year in the Big Ten tournament. 2 seasons ago, they won 73-69 in a game where they almost blew that lead. Yeah, bringing up blown leads. But they kept it, and they won that game. This season, Ohio State also beat Iowa 82-65 in Columbus. It was quite the thrashing, quite the spanking, and Fran McCaffrey was unhappy. Now, as it relates to Iowa at this point in the season, they had lost 3 in a row before beating Nebraska today, and they'd lost 5 of 6 before that. Their only win coming at home against Washington, who Stats and Info tells me is not traveling to Indianapolis. Washington will not be playing in the inaugural 15 team Big Ten tournament here in 2025. So not all that impressive. Here's the good thing with Ohio State against Indiana. They crushed them the first time, and I think this is a fantastic matchup for Ohio State. In order for Ohio State to win games, it needs to be able to play fluid, run up and down the floor basketball. And that's what Iowa loves to do. Shall we go to college basketball analytics and take a look at the numbers according to college basketball analytics? So Iowa, super high scoring team. They're 96th percentile in scoring this season at 82.3 points per game. The offensive rating at 116.3. That's really, really good. The pace, however, is the number I look at, and that's what gives me hope for Ohio State to win this game, even though they should be the better team already. Iowa's pace this season is at 70.4. That's 94th percentile in college basketball. They like to run up and down the floor. Ohio State, Sean Stewart, Aaron Bradshaw, they are not Zed Key. They like to run up and down the floor. Bruce Thornton, John Mobley Jr. in transition, hitting threes. Micah Parrish, slashing into the paint and making layups. This team is better when it can run up and down the floor. It's going to have the opportunity to do that against Iowa. Iowa, why have they been bad this year? Why are they at 16 and 15? Well, it's the defensive side of the ball. They've got a 112.5 defensive rating. That is 22nd percentile in college basketball this season, and the worst number in the Big Ten. Their offensive rebounding rate is also horrible, the worst number in the Big Ten. Second chance points, 17th in the Big Ten. So there are some numbers here on Iowa's sheet that really do not look good, and it's part of the reason why they've struggled so mightily this season. So this is a game you would expect Ohio State to win. This is a game that if you do not win this game, you, number one, don't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament. Number two, we're coming close to burning down Columbus and maybe Upper Arlington as well. We'll see. Now, if Ohio State wins that game, they're going to go play Illinois. Illinois gets the bye. They get to play on Thursday. This is where Ohio State could have been, having a bye on Thursday, not having to play on Wednesday, being above the Archie Miller rule, and a loss not necessarily hurting you all that much. You're probably in the NCAA tournament. If only Ohio State loses that game, they would go on to play Illinois. Just like last season, Ohio State beat Iowa in the Big Ten tournament in the first game, and then they went on, they played Illinois. One of the most frustratingly officiated games that I've seen for Ohio State basketball last year, Ohio State against Illinois. Terrence Shannon Jr. just giving up his body, not in a good way, like sacrificing his body, just saying, hey, take me, touch me, please. and he got whistles, and he got to the free throw line, and Illinois ended up winning that game in a tough, tough loss for Ohio State. So just like last season, Ohio State will have to beat Iowa, and then it'll have an opportunity to play Illinois. If you win and then you lose to Illinois, Bart Torvik, just throw this into Bart Torvik. It has Ohio State as the final team in the NCAA tournament. Illinois ends its season one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten. Kind of forgot about that loss to Duke that it had a couple weeks ago on a Saturday night. They've won 3 in a row in Big Ten play since that game. They beat Michigan and they beat Purdue. Some of the toughest teams in the Big Ten, they won again. So Illinois is on fire. They'll get a little bit of rest before they play Ohio State, of course, if Ohio State beats Illinois. So if you get to that point as Ohio State, you get a win over Iowa, you're 18-14. You lose to Illinois, you're 18-15. You're 3 games above 500. The Archie Miller rule traditionally says you've got to be 4 games above 500 in order to make it into the NCAA tournament. So that really means you got to go win against Illinois and push your record to 18-14, then 19-14. Then if you lose the next round, you're at 19-15, you should be okay. At least that's what the Archie Miller rule would say for Ohio State. So again, had they beaten Indiana, we wouldn't really need to have this discussion. They'd probably be in the NCAA tournament. Now with the loss, you need to beat Iowa, and then you need to beat Illinois to feel like you're probably in the NCAA tournament. If you lose to Illinois, we are all biting our nails on Selection Sunday at about 6:30, waiting for those final teams to get called and seeing if Ohio State is in the NCAA tournament. Speaking of the NCAA tournament, here's where we're going to go this week. So tonight, like I said, I'm having a conversation with someone. I'm going to have 2 pretty dang prominent bracketologists on the show. It's not Joe Lunardi, who we do not care about. If you're sitting here and you're looking at Joe Lunardi's numbers, he has been one of the more inaccurate bracketologists for the past couple years. He's kind of like Mel Kiper on the NFL draft side of ESPN. Just kind of lost their touch. Nothing wrong with that. They can still be friends. We can shake hands and part ways and say, we don't really want to use your stuff when it comes to bracketology. You're going to have one guy on who knows his stuff. I'm going to talk with him tonight. That episode will be out tomorrow. Then I'm going to have another conversation with another prominent bracketologist on Tuesday and drop that episode on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, you will get an Iowa and Ohio State preview. And then on Thursday, goodness, it's a busy time of year. We will recap Ohio State and Iowa and fingers crossed, hopefully preview an Ohio State against Illinois matchup. And that'll be the motion to close out this week. As long as Ohio State wins, we'll have an episode where we recap that game that Ohio State's won, and then we'll preview the next game it has to play in the Big Ten tournament. Again, highly, highly, highly encourage you to subscribe to the Views from the Shot podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you could be the one person watching on Twitter or watching on YouTube right now who can just subscribe, whether it be on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, doesn't matter to me. Subscribe. Be that one person. I would thank you. I might owe you my life. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's a great time of year for Ohio State basketball content. We'll say it that way. Not the best time of year to be an Ohio State basketball fan. It's highly stressful, but as we've said on this show before, we can turn that stress into excitement. Maybe. Just try to do that, okay? So subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're also on YouTube as well, where we're live right now. Make sure you're following on all the socials, on X at The Shot Pod. Follow on Instagram at The Shot Pod as well. And feel free. My DMs are open. You can ask me questions whenever you want. Going to have a lot of great content for you coming up this week. I do, of course, appreciate you watching this show, listening to the show if you missed it live. Time for me to shut up before you shut me off. Go Bucks.